It's a strange idea, non-dual relationships, isn't it? I mean, because a relationship by its definition is duality. So it takes, in other words, two people. So what does non-dual really mean? Well, non-dual means that you don't see the person as the other person as something other than yourself. Now, how does that work out? Huh? Well, it's possible if you subtract the person's body from the relationship. Hmm? How do you subtract the body from the relationship? You focus or concentrate on the shining being that's in the body. You understand that what you love in that person is that shining light, that shining awareness, that loving self that's in that person. And you understand that that loving, shining person is the same person that's in you, shining in you. And the other person on the other side sees the same in you. They see that loving, shining, awareful being, conscious being, that has no particular characteristics. As soon as you pay attention and start relating to the differences that obtain around that person, that shining person inside, your communication suddenly becomes dualistic. And then you have to transact with your peculiarities, need to transact with their peculiarities. And that becomes an extremely difficult situation. So in a non-dual relationship, you always focused on the oneness, the sameness of the two beings, and not on the differences that obtain in their bodies and minds.
You still have the jiva. Obviously, you'll have the person with their particular characteristics and likes and dislikes. But because both people are not identified as people or with themselves as people, they don't identify with the other person primarily as a person. Although the people may look like they're interacting like any other couple would, there's a very different understanding that's always there. It's never not present because it's knowledge. So you never forget it. You don't have to think about focusing on it because you are it. So you come from that place and know there seems to be two, there's really only one because there's just the self. Yes, you are communicating and transacting with yourself. Oh, I think because of who we are, it's automatically so. I mean, I don't think either of us could be in this relationship if it was any other way because we didn't want to be in a relationship. This relationship is in us. We were not looking for a relationship. We were not looking for another person. We were happy to share, but definitely not from a platform of needing it. So
Yeah.
it's a very different platform.
Yeah,
And
in a non-dual relationship, you communicate from fullness, from
yes,
completeness. You feel self-satisfied and satisfied in yourself. So
mm,
you're not demanding a love and affection and attention from the other person. You're willingly offering your love and attention to the person. So this kind of relationship is really um, an offering or a devotional
yes,
attitude rather than an extracting attitude, rather than an attempt
yes.
to get that person to satisfy your needs because you feel incomplete.
Yes, because you're obviously complete and full. Your only focus is really service, and I think that's probably its the underlying principle is the service, devotional aspect.
Yeah.
Hmm.
You-
How many people do you see serving each other or really paying attention?
And really paying attention to and looking for opportunities to serve. It's a very positive thing. You know, so your attention is um, always on some higher idea. Your attention is always to contribute to that other person's welfare. So you look for opportunities to satisfy them in various ways.
Yeah,
It
it's your
doesn't
greatest
mean,
joy.
yeah, it's your greatest joy.
Mm.
You're not looking for opportunities to satisfy yourself. You don't have to worry about that because they'll take care of you. So you take care of yourself by taking care of others, the other person in the relationship.
And because there's never a projection going on, there's just, you don't project stuff onto each other. There's never a conflict.
And if you do happen to project, if your ego or your personality tries to project, you know part of the
Immediately.
relationship is that you don't ask that other person to solve your problem. Hmm? You know that you're projecting and you solve the problem with reference to your self-knowledge, with reference to who you are. So you don't put the burden on another person.
There's no burden. There's no burden for the person to make you happy or full or complete or even to be present. It really doesn't matter whether they're present or not. Although we love being together, we're just as much together when we're not. There's never a sense of being apart.
Well, you do have to be qualified. You have to be qualified for it. You know, most relationships are just about uh, depending on other people
And needs fulfillment.
and and asking another person to fulfill you emotionally and spiritually and in every way. And very few people are secure enough in themselves not to demand from another person what they you know what they may need.
In fact, that's taken as a given, that you have someone in your life because there are certain expectations are to be met.
Yeah, because there's nothing worse than a relationship with a needy person. Relationships break down because
Because of expectation and need.
yeah, the expectations.
And yet it's a given in most relationships that certain things are expected. And it's true, relationship does have its dharma, which we would also follow. There is a dharma that each relationship needs to have. And it'll be individual to those people, so we follow that dharma. But it's a totally natural process. There's no thought involved in it. It's because it's who we are. So to have this relationship, you have to be this relationship.
Yeah, and be mature. I mean, a mature person, only a mature person. Most relationships come out of your childhood. I think the psychologists have indicated that most relationships are just trying to reestablish patterns of relating that happened in childhood when you're needy and dependent. And that psychology just doesn't work.
Yes.
And that's why I think there's so many unfortunate relationships and divorce and alcoholism and all these problems. It's because people haven't taken care of their inner child, and they're expecting somebody else to do it. But an adult is a person who looks self-reliant and looks to themselves for what they need rather than to others. So.
Yeah. Yeah, one has to be mature.
You can't just say, well, I have a lousy dualistic relationship, and therefore I want a non-dual relationship. What should I do?
No, that's not going to work.
That's not going to work, huh? It's not like there's any magic bullet here, or magic technique or secret mantra that you can chant to make this kind of thing happen. It's something that really comes to you when you get to a certain stage of growth in yourself.
No, it's not. It's like you can't decide to not have vasanas. It
So
doesn't work that
it's
way.
something given to you.
Yeah, it's a gift.
Mm.
And the best gifts are gifts you don't solicit, that really genuinely come from the universe. It's the universe's way of saying, here, you know, here's a big gift to you. This is the perfect relationship. And in our relationship, from my point of view, for sure, and Sundari feels the same way. It's a kind of love that just keeps growing and growing and growing. It just bubbles up all the time. You can't stop it. You don't feel like you have to try to love that person.
The love is loving you.
The love is loving you. You feel like you're being loved by this much greater force, and it just grows and grows and grows. That's all. There's no obstacles to it.
Well, for you, it was longer ago than me.
Yeah.
Yes, I've been in a dualistic relationship. That was quite a while ago. That was really prior to me finding Vedanta and achieving moksha. It's just it's fraught with the usual problems that dualistic relationships have: unmet needs, expectations that fail. And I had gone past the need for a relationship for a long time when this one came along, and that's probably why it did. I had resolved the issues. I had worked out what I needed to work out, and there wasn't anything for me to work out anymore. So
The need for
yes,
another
was gone.
It was gone.
That was absolutely gone.
So that would be a primary qualification. I had my situation's a little different because I had a extremely dualistic relationship. One, and it was very intense, and it was very passionate, and it was created a tremendous amount of suffering for me. And after that, I didn't have any relationships until um, I got through with my spiritual work. And when I was through with my spiritual work, I had relationships after that. And but in general, the the other person didn't have that non-dual vision that I had, which was okay, which was fine. It doesn't mean you can't have a relationship, but it just meant that um, I had to be more dispassionate in the relationship because I couldn't expect that kind of non-duality, that non-dual uh, vision to come from that other person. So I had to act often. You had to use a bit of karma yoga during the relationship. Karma yoga meaning indifference to the results of the
Yes.
action. And that was fine. It was okay, but it wasn't anything like this kind of relationship. Um, you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like Ram said, you need a lot of dispassion and karma yoga.
Yeah. Because the other person doesn't understand your lack of need.
They take it as disinterest or indifference.
They think you're, when you don't get upset, huh? If a person gets upset, they expect you to be upset about the same thing. But if you're happy in yourself, you don't get upset about those things. And they think, well, it's because you're cold or unfeeling or indifferent.
Or you don't care about them.
Or you don't care about them.
Mm.
But you can't really get excited about them because you see that their problem is all cooked up.
So what can you do?
Nothing. You just love them. You respond as best you can, and you don't put fake emotion into it. Huh?
Don't pretend to be emotional.
Yeah, don't.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Huh?
Yeah.
So there's a certain kind of discipline in those relationships because there's not an equality of understanding between the two people. And I'm the same as Sundari. I just more or less given up, uh, you know, on the idea of relationships. I was never against them.
It
Uh,
seemed that way. A
it
lot of people were surprised, and we got a lot of criticism from certain people because they thought that Ramji was being dishonest.
Oh yeah,
Because,
we did. Yeah,
Oh,
I had several very good friends who became extremely angry with me and refused to talk to me anymore, and who said I was a hypocrite and so forth and so on.
because he said that if you want moksha, you can't be chasing a relationship. But what they didn't understand is that he doesn't need moksha.
Yeah, I mean, my
Yeah.
argument is, I'm a spiritual teacher, and I teach freedom. And what I was saying, and it's still the truth, and it is the truth, is that you don't go into a relationship for freedom. You go into a relationship what? For attachment.
Yeah, you want your needs met.
You want your needs met. You want uh, so those two purposes are contradictory. And I think people, heard me saying that, and they didn't think that, well, you know, he's not looking for freedom, he's already free. Even though the reason they were listening to me was because I was already free. So, and it was all women basically who probably had some unfulfilled fantasies in their relationship with me. And when I did fall in love with Sundari, then it caused some problem. But
Yeah, it was quite surprising, but I guess not surprising
yeah,
also. Yeah. There was almost no choice involved in it because it seemed like it chose us. Or
yes.
I think he used his city powers.
Needy people are not all that attractive, although need attracts. And a lot of people feel really happy when they're needed. They feel that they're loved when they're needed, and that's a very dangerous situation to find yourself in, because need and love are two different things.
Very different
Uh,
things.
you
Yes.
need to understand the difference between need and love.
Needy relationships are always
Full of
full of
conflict.
conflict.
There's always anxiety. I mean, in those kind of relationships where you have two people who feel incomplete, as soon as you fall in love with somebody who's
Yeah.
incomplete, uh, anxiety starts up, because you never know if your needs are going to be met, and you have to be very careful what you say, because their idea of love is that you satisfy their likes and dislikes, but you don't always know what their likes and dislikes are, and you're often not capable of satisfying their likes and dislikes. Some things are totally unreasonable that are asked of you, and you can't satisfy them, and then the person thinks, well, maybe I'm not loved anymore, and that creates anger, and then denial, and so this whole projection, this whole
Yes.
emotional range of uh, uh, a whole range of emotions comes flooding out on the basis of this perceived difference and this need to satisfy yourself through the other person. And in a non-dual relationship, you don't necessarily always satisfy the other person's desire if they have a desire,
But it doesn't matter.
but it doesn't matter to them or to you. So sometimes you just say no, I can't, and you explain the reasons, and that's good enough, and they accept that. You know, but this idea of, of wanting to be wanted, huh? It's a big problem. And in a non-dual relationship, you don't feel that way. You feel like, you always feel happy.
Yeah.
There's just a natural happiness that comes without effort because the foundation, the basic idea is solid, which is there's no difference between me and you.
Mhm.
I, huh?
That's why the happiness just keeps intensifying,
Yeah.
because you already are happy, and two happy people together, supposedly two, create that incredible synergy. I would say possibly the question to ask is, why do you need a relationship in the first place? What would be your reasons for wanting a relationship, any kind of relationship? Because by wanting a relationship, you are saying that there's something lacking in me. So that's really the place to start from. And for people who are in relationships, it's difficult for us to say, and we do get asked quite often, people who write in, what to do about their relationships, and it's hard for us to tell them what to do. You know,
Although you can move out of a bad relationship while you're in the relationship if
without leaving the relationship.
without leaving the relationship if you do the relationship as karma yoga.
Yes.
I have a friend who was quite a ladies' man and had many relationships, and they all were disastrous. And he got cleaned out. He lost all his wealth and everything and so forth because of his needs. And the women just took him to a cleaners, uh, and then he got spiritually awakened, and he learned karma yoga. And it was easy for him to learn karma yoga because he'd been in the military service. And because he'd been in the military service, the motto in the military is the needs of the service come first. Huh? Now, can you see that? Huh? This is why these big organizations work, is because people subject their will to the needs of the organization. And so that model works well in the needs of my my wife or my husband or whatever it is, they come first. So you take care of, and you don't get angry because you're doing the relationship as service. And so you take whatever results in a positive way. You learn from the results. And he found, and so because he was an attractive guy and a really good guy, of course the next relationship pops up, and he started doing that relationship with that attitude, and it's worked out very well. He's got a lovely wife and a beautiful child, and he's really happy. And his wife's not quite so happy because she doesn't quite have that attitude, but he's really happy in the relationship, even though it's not a perfect relationship. And so you can, by changing your attitude, work your way out of a bad relationship when you're in it. You know. Yeah, I mean, karma yoga
Yeah.
is about taking care of your relationships with the world and converting your emotions into devotion. I mean, that's what bhakti yoga. That's what devotion is about. And this film we've been doing here in India is about that. The relationship you have yourself in the form of deities, and using a deity, a symbol of the self, to what? Convert your emotional needs into what? Devotion for the truth or for the self. And so this kind of any kind of relationship can be a model, a devotional model. And that devotional model will what? You will grow very quickly and beautifully spiritually if you can uh, get your mind behind that idea. But it's difficult, because people are self-centered and they're insecure, and they always want mommy or daddy there to like fix their problem, and you don't want that really in a spiritual relationship. You want to like take care of yourself and serve the other person. See that other person as your best self, as your highest self, and it works. because we're really happy. And it just keeps getting better and better all the time.
Yeah,
So
it really does.
don't look for a relation. Don't
Yeah.
look for it. Huh? Do your spiritual work. Get yourself strong and independent and free, and then leave the rest up to, you know, life. Life will supply you with that when the time is right. Because I mean, I never thought such a thing was really possible. I mean, I knew it was possible, but I was, you know, getting old, and I was wondering if this was really ever going to happen. Because I knew what it was, but then the Lord sent Sundari, and it um, just happened without really any effort at all. Just natural uh, progression. So.
No.
What is open
Sexually, you mean?
Yes.
relationship?
No.
No. Worst
Would never work.
idea.
Mm.
Absolutely worst idea that human beings can have. It's just those kind of open relationships are just based upon sexual greed, basically. Uh,
That's why I said there's a dharma of the relationship that you decide on and you stick to that. If either one of us had decided that that wasn't okay, we wouldn't be together.
yeah.
Because fidelity is a value we both have.
Well, that
And it's about respect
yeah,
as well.
yeah. And I mean the template. You know this open relationship idea is only really it's a it only really exists in very wealthy, decadent, um, bourgeois societies,
And bored.
bored bourgeois societies. People, absolutely,
Mm.
huh? The basic template for life, like you don't see it here in India. You really don't see it anywhere else. In fact, here people don't even have relationships, much less open relationships. Occasionally they do in the cities, but there's a basic dharma. There's a basic natural order that the consciousness is set up, you know, to structure the relationship between man and woman, and that doesn't include 3 or 4 or other people in there. You know, and like I was talking to a fellow the other day, who's uh, he hasn't been in a relationship for 10 years, and suddenly this beautiful woman comes along and falls in love with him and wants to have a relationship with him. But what the problem is, she's got a husband. Now, he goes off and does something, then he comes back, and then there she is at his house knocking on the door, and she's left her husband. And he said, physically left her husband. But he says when they're together, it's like there's 3 people all the time. Huh? Even though she's not sleeping with her husband, her ex-husband, in her mind, what? Her whole, you know, so there's actually 3 people going on there, and she's not really able or capable to give her love totally to the other person. So, you know, if you're giving love here and there and everywhere else all around, how can you actually fully like serve that other person with your love? You can't do it. It's just it's totally greed. I never was in one, and I never want to be in one, and I think they're absolutely foolish. I've never seen that kind of relationship actually work. And the few people I've met who were in them were always just satisfied people. You'd think that if that relationship was that kind of relationship was so wonderful, you'd see spiritually fulfilled and satisfied people, but you don't. So yeah, definitely not. Right?
No.
We got ourselves very clear about that right from the beginning, explicitly. There was no,
Because we said, we were very clear about all the values that we were bringing into a relationship. And that's what's very important. I think a lot of people don't do that. They're not clear about what their values are and what they're available for. And that's the dharma of a relationship. You need to establish that from the word go.
yeah, to establish your values, make it very clear that everybody understands. Relationships should be actually contractual and not emotional. You should the emotions and the feelings for the other person should flow out of respect for the other person's attentiveness to the values that the relationship is established on.
Mm.
You know? So if and then then an admiration and respect and love comes out for that person. So you have to really establish your values in the beginning. We're not saying that you can't have relationships based on other values. Fair enough. Even if you had a sexual relation values based on pleasure only, as long as you sat down and worked out the contract, the rules, and everybody played by the rules, then that's a dharmic, that's a fair relationship. In other words, your mind is not going to be agitated concerning that particular topic. So, relationship, a non-dual relationship is consciously entered into. You know what the person values, and they know what you value, and you have these not just implicit agreements, you have explicit agreements. So there's no opportunity for misunderstanding to
There's
occur.
no gray areas.
There's no gray areas.
And they don't change.
Yeah, and in non-dual, it's based upon eternal value.
Everything else may change in some way or another, but those values stay.
Yeah, you could just call it an unconditional love for the other. Your love for that other person is unconditional. You're not asking that that person fulfill certain conditions for your love. You're just giving it freely. And so you have to have if that value is there and you understand what that is, then there are not going to be problems. You should have those values in place. You can't put those values in place. I mean, you can. If you suffer a lot and then you start thinking, you can, assume good values. You can assume and cultivate good values. But, it's going to be a long time before, reality affords you the opportunity to practice those values with somebody else who has similar values, for sure. So you need to take care of yourself first and become a mature adult before you can actually love properly. You don't want any qualification in your love. If another person has even a thought, a small thought of duality or difference there, it's painful. So it's just painful because this kind of love is complete love.
And it's completely pure.
It's just pure. It doesn't demand anything at all. And you respect that in the other person, so you don't demand anything from them. You want to see their love grow, not just for you, but for them, because you think of them first. This fellow said, the needs of the service come first. I'm happy if you're happy. So I look for any opportunity I can to honor you and respect you in any way that is necessary.
I would say don't focus on the relationship, focus on the qualifications for moksha.
Yeah, you work on yourself first. Absolutely.
Take care of that first. The relationship comes later, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
If you don't take care of yourself, how can you be in a proper relationship? So you need that, I think that's why it came to us, because we were both like looking after ourselves properly, and not asking the world to, hey, fill me up. Like we were both making a contribution to the world. So that's a totally different attitude than somebody who's feeling lonely and wants to have a non-dual relationship because they hear it's a great deal.
It's not
It is a great deal, but you're not gonna. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, to be in a free relationship, you need to be free. There's no fine print for that.
And there is a tool to set yourself free.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, like Vedanta, we're teachers of Vedanta. Vedanta is a tool to set yourself free. From what? Your sense of limitations, which means, your desires and your fears and so forth and so on. So the degree to which you're free, to that degree you're capable of what? Having meaningful relationships. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't have relationships. It just means you should keep working on yourself, and you'll see that all your relationships, whatever they are, improve. Because you don't want to be a burden. Huh? Huh? When you're asking for something, then you make yourself into a burden on other people. And there's a whole bunch of people who like being wanted and enjoy being, but maybe it's satisfying for them and maybe it isn't. I don't quite understand how that kind of psychology works, but I don't want to have to look after your needs all day long. So.
The emphasis is on have to.
Yeah, and have
because when you're in a free relationship, you want to look after the other person.
Yeah, that's right. You want to. You don't. You don't feel obligated to do
Because
that. You're looking for opportunities. Yeah. I'm always looking for opportunities to serve Sundari. I'm
and
keeping
likewise.
my eye open, and I listen to what she says and does, and then I look for opportunities. I try to see to it that she gets what she wants or what she needs.
Because when you pay attention, you actually do hear. You hear the other person. You don't hear yourself filtered through what you think the other person wants. You actually hear them clearly.
Yeah.
And you're always paying attention. This is what James says, that love is paying attention.
Love is attention, isn't
Exactly.
it?
Yeah. Love is attention.
Yes.
When people complain, they come to me often, they complain that, their relationship is bad. And I say, well, how do you know? He said, well, because he doesn't pay attention to me anymore. He says he loves me, but he doesn't pay attention to me. Well, and he says, oh, no, I love you. But he doesn't love you. Whatever he's paying attention to is what he loves. So, you want to pay attention to that person because they're beautiful. You see yourself there. It's totally narcissistic, you could say, because you're really in love with yourself. Not in a narcissistic way, but it looks like it. It looks like that, but it's not.